Okay, I'm putting in the last piston on that 1935 F20 and thought I'd film it. So here's what I do. I've got the rings, and you see the ring gaps are offset. None of them are over the wrist pin. There's a gap here and then there's a gap here. They're not lined up with each other. There's a gap and there's a gap. So what I like to do is I just like to use lubricate just to kind of hold everything in place, and then it makes it go in, and it, you know, it's assembly lube, so everybody knows what that stuff does. If you don't, it just lubricates everything, makes it all go better, and then when you first start up, you're not starting and running dry parts. So, you know, you don't have to be sparing with the stuff. I'd rather have too much lube on this kind of stuff than not enough. I like to squirt some in here on the wrist pins and then just work it in. It'll find its way in there, and then put it on the rod bearings. Okay, these F20s and regulars and F30s, and I think most of them, if you look right here, you got two little knots. So I'm putting in piston number 2. 2 pings, and then these two right here. These two marks go towards the crankshaft in the block, so that puts the cup facing this way. So I'll show you when we get there. So I like to use a ring compressor. Makes it pretty easy. These have to go in from the bottom. These pistons do, because the piston's a smaller diameter than the rods, so you have to go in from underneath. You put them in from the bottom versus some you can put in from the top. So now I'm just tightening up this ring compressor. Just take your time and try not to move the rings. You want them set where you put them. So just get her, snug it up. Okay. Now let's go over there and see if we can get this and put in. Now if you look, you can see that the bottom of the ring compressor is not flush with the bottom of the piston. The piston sticks out proud of it. These are the little notches that keep it from sliding inside the cylinder. Well, you want your piston to start in the cylinder, so you want to keep your ring compressor back off of the edge of the piston. So you're going to have to play with it. You're going to have to get the crankshaft lined up just right so you can get in there and do it. It's kind of tricky, but you can see it. I might be able to see it from through this handhole up here. Huh? So, working right here on this piston. Let's move this a little. No, not yet. Okay, so there it started in. Alright. The piston started in the hole. So then I'll just push it in a little bit. Give it a twist. Now I've got to push it. what I like to try to do is I'll take the rod cap off and I'll keep the right hand stuff on the right side and the left hand stuff on the left side. That way it all goes back on there the way I took it off. But if you'll notice, those two punch marks are over here and the camshaft's on this side, so the cup is facing the cam, the little cup on the rod cap. So got a bunch of shims and all that stuff, so just like to try to take it all off just the way it came off when I took the engine apart. These will go on the left side. These guys will go on the right. So I'm going to continue to push that piston in. Okay, so there went my ring compressor. So now I've got to open that ring compressor and take it out. Just put the line, I don't need it anywhere. And then I'll just open this so it clears the rod cap. I'm done with the ring compressor. What we have to do is we have to get it to where it'll clear the crankshaft. You can just push the rod bolts up, push the piston in a little more. All right. There we go. So there's piston where it needs to be. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put these shims back in. There's the left hand shims. Here's the right hand shims. Just make sure that your rod bolts are all the way down. Whoops. There's the cap. There's a nut. And there's a nut. Okay, so now that they're all in, what I'll do is I need to figure out what I need to torque these to keep the right gap in here for oil. And I need to check my book, but I think it's from 3 to 5 thousandths of an inch of a gap in here. So what I do is use plastic gauge. I'll take this rod cap back off, put a piece of plastic gauge in it, torque it to like 50 pounds, take the rod cap off and measure the plastic gauge and go from there. If it needs to be a little tighter to get the right width on that plastic gauge, that tells me how big of a gap I have between my rod cap and my crankshaft. Or I tighten it up or loosen it. It gives me a starting spot. So, and that's it. So that's how you put in pistons, new rings. So right now, if you look at the engine, I've got camshafts in it, lifters are in it, push tubes are in it, new rings. I've honed the cylinder, and the pistons are in. So it's about ready for me to, once I do the measuring on the rod caps, then I'll pick it back up and put it crossways back on the frame again, and we'll go from there. So just continue to do progress. So thanks for watching, and be sure and subscribe. And you got the grease on both.